Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. My name is Madeline, and I am one of the instructors and dive masters at Kona Honu Divers. I am also wrapping up my final semester at Hilo, finishing up a degree in marine science. And I wanted to create a webinar series talking about different aspects of the ocean and just talking about the ocean in general. On top of working at Kona Honu Divers, I will also be working at the Ocean Rider Seahorse Farm as well. So I'm really excited to kick off this series. I am Mermaid Mo, and I'm going to be talking to you guys today about these little awesome critters. So the first question that I'm going to ask you guys is whether or not you think seahorses are fish. Most people are really surprised to find out that seahorses are fish, mostly because they don't really look like what we have in our mind what a fish would look like. So yeah, they are fish. They are in the family Cygnathidae, and that family includes not just the seahorses, but also the pipefish, like this really cute little banded pipefish over here. It also includes the sea dragons, like this weedy sea dragon pictured here in the middle. And then, of course, the seahorses. So they're all within the same family, but they all have different genuses and classifications in that respect. But today, we're mostly just going to talk about the seahorses. So seahorses do have a global distribution all across the globe, mostly in the temperate and tropical water. So as you can see, they're mostly concentrated just around the coastal lines, not really too much at all, even out in the open ocean. And again, more near the equator in the tropical and temperate regions of the oceans. You'll see that they are really heavily concentrated all over here in like the Indo-Pacific, over here in like the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, and then also here in the Mediterranean. That's mostly because those tend to be shallower, warmer waters with lots of really good coral reef habitats and sea grass beds for those seahorses to live in. Okay. So yeah, they live in coral reef habitats. This picture is actually taken by one of my good friends, Bryant Grady, who I believe is in this webinar. So yeah, and then the seagrass beds too. So those are the two big main habitats that seahorses tend to live in the shallower, more coastal waters. Now you may be thinking, how on earth are seahorses fish? They don't really look like one at all. I promise you they have all of the same main anatomy as a fish does. So we're going to compare a seahorse to one of the fish that I'm sure most everybody knows, the clownfish. So seahorses tend to have all of the same fins and anatomy and things like that. So, again, eyes, mouths. They have pectoral fins, like this fin right over here on the clownfish, except for instead of being here on the seahorse's more abdomen area, their pectoral fins are up on their head, and they kind of look like, I did not want to go to the next slide yet. They kind of look like little funky ears that flap in the wind, which are kind of cute. They do have gills. In seahorses, they look like big bulging chipmunk cheeks as they're breathing underwater. They have a dorsal fin as well, except for it's right here, and it looks a little bit different and functions a little bit differently from a regular fish's dorsal fin. And then finally, they also have a caudal fin or a tail fin, quite a bit different than a quote normal fish. So for the seahorse, their dorsal fin is how they actually move forwards and backwards through the water. They don't use their tail fin or their caudal fin to propel themselves forwards and backwards. They rely on that dorsal fin on their back to be kind of a fluttery motion to propel themselves forwards and backwards. So that's a little bit different from a quote regular fish, right? Because their dorsal fin is more for stabilization in the water. And seahorses use their caudal fin pretty much as stabilization. It is a prehensile tail that they use to grab onto things and keep themselves from getting blown all about their habitat. Somewhere in their evolutionary journey, seahorses decided that it was more beneficial to be able to grab on and to be able to hide in their habitats than to be able to swim quickly. So that's when they developed this tail and their colorations and all of that amazing goodness. Yeah. So again, pectoral fins, same thing in seahorses as regular fish. That's how they steer left and right in the water. Okay. Looking at the seahorses, you're going to notice that they kind of look like a science experiment gone a little bit haywire. I like to call them a patchwork quilt of a couple of different animals. They were actually named hippocampus. That is their genus name, hippocampus. And that essentially means horse-faced sea monster. And that's where they get the name seahorse from. So they have a head of a horse and they kind of look like a sea monster a little bit. They have a straw mouth that they use to slurp up their food. They cannot actually bite and chew their food. Their jaws are fused together. So they just swim around and slurp up their food as if they had a straw. We already talked about their tail. They have a prehensile monkey tail. Again, functions the same way as you would think that a monkey's tail would function. It grabs onto things so that they can hold on. Another thing that I think is really awesome about these animals is their eyes. Seahorses have phenomenal eyesight. They can actually see all of the colors of the rainbow and up to 10 to 15 feet out of the water. So they can see the colors on your shirt, what your face looks like, all very, very clearly. They've got pretty awesome eyesight. And on top of that, they have what I like to call chameleon eyes. So they can move independently from each other. So one can be looking forwards, the other can be looking backwards. And it allows them to see all around in different directions and helps them to evade predators. All right, so here's another picture of seahorses, and you're going to notice that they have lots of different colors and patterns. Even just these 4 seahorses are really quite unique. Seahorses, really, it all depends on what color they're going to be based on their genetics. So they don't necessarily change color in the way that you think like a chameleon would, but they can darken and lighten their skin a little bit. And yes, I did say that seahorses have skin. So instead of having scales, seahorses have skin, unlike other fish. And so if you have them in captivity, that means that they're a little bit more prone to getting sunburnt. So sometimes they'll be a little bit more darker just because of more sun exposure. And those seahorses are just rocking a little bit of a suntan, which is really awesome. So what do seahorses eat? What do you guys think? You guys want to type in that Q&A and maybe answer what you think seahorses eat, or if you know what they eat, that would be really cool. If not, that's totally fine too. I can just tell you. No, seahorses do not eat scuba divers. They're small little animals, only about this big. Kelp, that would be a really good, that's a really good guess that they would eat kelp, but they do not eat kelp, actually. They do eat plankton. Yeah, awesome, Oren. They eat plankton. They eat little itty bitty shrimps, all right? So these are 2 of the kinds of shrimps that they would typically eat. So the one over here on the right would be a mysid shrimp. Seahorses are active hunters and predators. They like to chase their food. So they go after these live shrimp and slurp them up with their little straw mouth. And then these guys over here, this is the brine shrimp, or the Artemia salina. So now the next most commonly asked question that I get about seahorses is, how on earth can you tell the difference between a male and a female? Most fish species, it's really difficult because all of their anatomy is on the inside. Some of them is a little bit easier, like sharks and manta rays. But seahorses are a little bit more along the lines of an easier animal to tell the difference on. So here's a little diagram of male and a female. So the male has a brood pouch on his abdomen. It's a nice, smooth, soft, fleshy section shown on this animal over here on the left. And then the female doesn't have that pouch. So her abdomen makes a sharp 90-degree angle before it tapers down into the rest of her tail. So you can see her stomach come along, meet the base of her tail and then taper down into the rest. Whereas the male, he has a big belly. So here's a picture of what it looks like on a real seahorse. It's a little bit more cryptic, but you can still tell the difference relatively easily. Here's the female, her abdomen cuts in sharp right here and then goes into the rest of her tail. Whereas the male, it tapers almost perfectly and smoothly down into the rest. Okay. All right. So the male has the pouch. That's because that is a brood pouch. And the male has a brood pouch because he is the only animal in the entire animal kingdom that will have a true internal pregnancy. The male actually gets pregnant in this situation, which I think is really fantastic. And this is one of the reasons why I love seahorses, is because the males do a lot of the heavy lifting. So yeah, the female deposits her eggs into his pouch and then he'll seal them up and fertilize the eggs internally. That's how it is a true pregnancy. Because the male fertilizes the eggs, he really is a true male. Carlos, to answer your question, yes, pipefish do as well. The only difference is, though, that pipefish don't have a true pouch. It's more of like a section on his abdomen that the female sticks the eggs to. So it's not a true internal pregnancy like the seahorse, because it's more on the outside, on the underside of his belly. Okay. So if a male wants to impress a female, what he's going to do is he's going to puff up his pouch nice and large, make himself look all impressive, say, hey, ladies, look at me. I can hold all of these eggs in my pouch. Kind of like how males in this generation go to the gym to pump iron and get all swole for the ladies. That's kind of what the male seahorse is doing, but with his pouch. He wants to show off his impressive dad bod. So if he finds a female that finds him attractive, the female is going to wrap her tail around his, and they're going to gaze into each other's eyes for a brief moment of seahorse romance while they swim around and around in the water doing a really elaborate mating dance. And that's what we see in this image here. And then when the female, which is this seahorse here, is ready, she will deposit her eggs into the male's pouch. And then she looks at him, says, bye-bye, I'm done, and swims away, which is a pretty great deal if you ask me. The male will then seal up the pouch, fertilize the eggs internally, and will be pregnant for around a month. After a month time frame, he will give birth to, in some species, up to 600 babies at one time, which is absolutely insane to me. But that is actually really incredibly important because seahorse fry, or these little babies, they only have a 1 in 1,000 chance of survival out in the wild. So only 1 out of 1,000 seahorse fry born out in the wild will actually live to adulthood. So that means that they need to produce a lot more babies. They need to have larger clutch sizes, and the male needs to give birth to a lot more in order for more of them to be able to survive. So after the male gives birth, the female will give him a short 2 minutes to rest, and then that seahorse will be pregnant again and again and again for his entire life. So it's just a life of pregnancy and popping out babies for this male. The female just deposits the eggs and swims away and rests. So seahorses live to be around 12 years old. And so that means that those 12-year-old seahorses will be pregnant for around 10 to 11 years straight, give or take a couple months or something like that. What kills or eats the fry? Buzz, that's a really good question. Because seahorse fry are so small, they join the planktonic community out in the ocean, which are the floaters and the drifters. Lots of other fish like to eat little baby fish, all the plankton, little baby seahorses, things like that. And so just other bigger predators will eat those fry. Also, they're really tiny. Sometimes you get runts of the litter where they're a lot smaller than their siblings. And so some of them just might not be strong enough to make it. There's also food competition and a bunch of other factors as well. That's a really great question. Okay. Lily, why is there a mature looking baby in the tummy, whereas there are tiny green babies outside? That I am not too sure. I think it might be two different species that spawned within the same tank. That might be why there's different sizes of babies in this one image. Yeah, good question. All right. So are seahorses in danger? Yes. The answer to that is yes, absolutely. The seahorses are in danger. So seahorses, you don't really tend to think of them as a little snack that you would want to eat. But traditional Chinese medicine does consider seahorses to have some kind of medicinal property. They tend to think of them as a natural Viagra. And that partly comes from the fact that the male has the babies. And so for some reason, they think that that's really macho and masculine. And so they think that could help as a natural male enhancement. But unfortunately, there's no real scientific evidence that supports that claim. So they're just harvesting thousands of seahorses every single year to be used as a medicine that doesn't necessarily work. Another thing is souvenirs. I know most of us may have gone to like a coastal souvenir shop, like in California, for instance, like in Monterey Bay or something like that, and seen, excuse me, seen, your little dried sea stars next to the seashells, and then right next to those guys are the seahorses. Unfortunately, most of those seahorses were harvested from the wild to be dried and sold specifically as souvenirs for people to take home, which is really morbid and depressing to me, especially since all seahorses out in the wild are endangered. It just seems really unnecessary to me. But probably one of the biggest ones is the ornamental or the aquarium trade. I mean, who wouldn't want to have a cute little seahorse in their home aquarium, right? They're just adorable. They're arguably one of the more charismatic fish out in the ocean that you could have in your home aquarium. But unfortunately, they have a shortened life expectancy when they are brought from the wild and put into, the little tiny glass box. One of those reasons is diseases that happens when you take pretty much any wild fish or animal from out in the ocean and you put them in your aquarium. Those diseases tend to multiply and become harmful to the animal and to the other animals that are also in your aquarium. Whereas when they're out in the wild, they can kind of mitigate that on their own. They have plenty of water to wash it away, and the water is constantly circulating, right? But in a tank, it's a confined little box, so it's really easy for those diseases to spread. Another one is that wild-caught seahorses are natural-born hunters and predators, right? So they like to eat live food, and most people don't have access to that kind of food for their seahorses. One of the most readily available foods is actually frozen mysis shrimp, but wild-caught seahorses won't naturally go after that because they're not scavengers. They don't want to eat something that's dead. So oftentimes seahorses will die of hunger and starvation in a home aquarium because they just aren't being offered the right food that they want to eat. And then the last one, which I think is the most heartbreaking to me, is that seahorses are prone to depression, just like us humans, right? Out in the wild, seahorses are monogamous, meaning that they have one mate for their entire life. And so when we take seahorses from out in the wild for the aquarium trade, people tend to just take one of them, just harvest one, therefore separating that seahorse from its mate. And again, just like human, seahorses are prone to depression. So when they are separated from that mate, they get so stressed out and depressed that they'll actually stop eating and starve themselves that way. It's really sad. They actually die of depression and a broken heart in a roundabout way. So yeah, those are some of the reasons that seahorses are endangered. Another one would be like bycatch, because seahorses like to eat shrimp, and we humans also like to eat shrimp, although it's a little bit of a different species. A lot of times they accidentally get scooped up along with the other fish that we're trying to go for. There's also habitat destruction and degradation that is associated with different kinds of pollutions and, with the killing of coral reefs and all those things like that. So pretty much anything that is harmful to the ocean is also going to be harmful to the seahorses as well. So now you may be thinking, what can I do, right? Seahorses used to be common in all of the oceans across the globe, but now pretty much every species of seahorse is endangered. So what can you do to help save the seahorse? As I mentioned before, pretty much anything that you can do to help the ocean will also help the seahorses. So one of the first ones is to, hold on, saw a pelagic seahorse on our blackwater dive thanks to Jeff. Oh, that's super awesome. Do they mate for life? How do they find each other, stay together? I don't know too much of the specifics about the pelagic seahorse. I do know that they are relatively solitary seahorses, so they don't necessarily have the same kind of separation anxiety, I guess you could say, as other seahorses would from being separated from their mates. So, and I'm not too sure if they mate for life, but I could definitely find out the answer to that question and get back to you for sure. It's a really good question. Okay, so ways that you can help to save the ocean. One of the first biggest ones that I can think of is to donate to and support conservation efforts. There's a ton of them out there. I know many of us might be scuba divers or snorkelers or anything like that. And if you're a diver, you've most definitely heard of Project Aware. I'm hoping, at least. So they have a list of 10 things that divers can do to help save the ocean and to mitigate your impacts. So a couple of these points I actually took from Project Aware's 10 steps, which I think are really awesome. There's other things like the Coral Reef Alliance that focuses on coral reef conservation. There's the Nature Conservancy, which out here on the Big Island, and also in other places as well, but here on the Big Island specifically, they have one really great site. They're out at Kiholo Bay, and they do a lot of really awesome restoration work over there for Kiholo Bay's fish ponds and the native Hawaiian kind of traditional invasive species and things like that. There's also things that you can actually purchase, and a portion, if not all of your funds that you paid for the thing that you purchased will go into different kinds of conservation efforts. So one of them is the 4Ocean Signature Blue Clean Seas. That removes 1 pound of trash for every bracelet that you purchase, I believe is how that works. Yes, we had a chat comment. Maybe not. Okay. So yeah, so they're really pretty cool looking bracelets. They come in lots of different colors. There's another one, Pila Case. And so what they do is they create essentially waste-free phone cases. I have one on my phone that I really like. And they're compostable. So when you're all done with it, you can, put it in your compost or, send it back to Pila Case and they'll compost it for you. which I think is really awesome. We're straying away from plastic phone cases and things that can be repurposed. And yeah. So another one, again, as divers, I'm sure we already know this, but be an ecotourist. Take only photos, leave only bubbles. There's a lot of really good charters and different dive shops, different companies that really focus on ecotourism. So if you go someplace new, instead of just going to the museums and the bars and the clubs and things like that, actually go out and get to experience the environment. Go take a hike, do like a guided hike trail tour or something like that, or do something like the manta ray night dive here in Kona. You know, there's lots of different things that you can do as a tourist when you're traveling to other locations that would be things that are more geared towards conservation and being more green and more eco-friendly. This is one of the biggest ones, is become a debris activist. My motto, pretty much anytime I go to the beach or go on a hike, or, you know, really anytime I go on a dive, if I see a piece of trash, I pick it up. That's one of the biggest things that you can do, is help to minimize how much trash or debris is out in the environment. You know, participate in big organized beach cleanups. If you're snorkeling or diving, pick up trash as you're diving along. I actually have a bag that I carry with me when I dive that I stick my trash in, so that I'm not just limited to my two hands. I can actually pick up more. And if I see more than just two pieces of trash, I can pick them up and put them in my bag and take them out of the water and dispose of them properly. Another one, huge one, is making responsible seafood choices. Living in Hawaii, I'm sure a lot of us really love to eat seafood, whether it be poke or sushi or, you know, really whatever. You want to make sure that you're making responsible choices. We have a chat. Ask Johnny C how many gifts you brought up for him. Yeah, I'm sure Johnny C has had many gifts given to him, different bits of trash and things like that. Yeah, make responsible seafood choices. Luckily for you, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, based out of California, has made it really pretty easy for you. They have this program called the Seafood Watch, and I'm sure a couple of you might have heard of it, where it's gone and done all of the research for you, and it's figured out for your respective areas what are your best choices to eat, good alternatives, and things that you should avoid. The best choices tend to be abundant, well-managed, and caught or farmed in environmentally friendly ways. So they're not over-exploiting that species. The good alternatives are ones that, you know, you're still okay to eat, but you might want to limit how much you're eating of them. Yeah. And then the red, obviously, are the ones that you should avoid, the ones that you really shouldn't be consuming at this point. Not only because it's not sustainable to eat them or to farm them, but also because they might be harmful to your health. Like, they might have things like heavy levels of heavy metals like mercury, you know, just not necessarily something that you want to consume right now. So the Monterey Bay Aquarium has these lovely little seafood watch guides. And this one is the one for Hawaii. They used to only have these little cards and their website, but now they've made it a little bit more user-friendly and accessible. And they do have an app for your smartphone that you can download. It's a little bit more, not necessarily advanced, but there tends to be a little bit more information on this app than just on the cards. So the cards are specific per area. So this one, for instance, is for Hawaii. There's one for California, one for, you know, the other states as well. So that makes it a little bit more limited, but the app is really awesome. I'm going to pull it up on my phone. This is what it looks like. And it can actually GPS your location. So it'll tell you all of the same information for your area. But if you decide to go on vacation to California, Florida, Texas, something like that, it will also GPS your location for that area and tell you everything, all the same information as before, but for the new area that you're in, for Texas or Florida or whatever. So it's a really awesome little tool to have in the palm of your hands or in your back pocket that you can use to make more responsible seafood choices. And then this one, I'm sure we've all heard the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce your use and consumption of things if you can. Reduce the amount of plastic straws that you're using, right? Reduce the amount of paper towels, maybe cut out paper towels. So just overall reduction. Reuse it if you can. So for me, I'm a huge fan of reusing things like pickle jars, which is really bizarre, but I have a ton of pickle jars in my house that I use as a form of Tupperware. And then recycle. Whatever you can recycle, whether it be your aluminum cans, plastic water bottles, compost your phone cases, try and figure out something that you can do to follow these 3 things, or at least one of these 3 things, because every little bit helps. And then one last closing note before I ask you guys if you have any questions. There is a Seahorse Farm here in Kona. I mentioned it here at the beginning of this talk. It's called the Ocean Rider Seahorse Farm and the Seahorse Hawaii Foundation. Ocean Rider Seahorse Farm has been around since '98, and what they have done is they have domesticated a species of seahorse known as the Hippocampus erectus, or the American seahorse. And so their whole idea was to teach the seahorse how to eat frozen shrimp, show them that there are other fish in the sea to eliminate monogamy, and make them really the perfect home aquarium pet so that they could sell them into the aquarium trade to get people to stop taking seahorses from out in the wild. And then they also adopted a nonprofit organization called the Seahorse Hawaii Foundation. And so what they're doing with that foundation is they're acquiring species of seahorses from all over the world, and they are breeding them in captivity so that we can have a living gene bank of those species of seahorses. That way, if they get into some danger out in the wild or populations get too low, we can re-release some of these animals out into their native habitats and help to regenerate their populations. So the Seahorse Hawaii Foundation has already been doing a lot of really good work in Fiji, the Philippines, Tonga, and even in Hawaii, helping to boost those seahorse populations. Chat, yes, foundation is spelt wrong. Oh, thank you for that. I can bring that up to the Seahorse Farm. You're absolutely right. I did not notice that. Anyway, but another focus that the Seahorse Hawaii Foundation is also working on is the breeding and propagation of sea dragons. So sea dragons are famously difficult to breed in captivity. Their home habitat is off the coast of Australia, and they just are really hard to breed in captivity. Nobody has been successful in doing it, meaning that they haven't gotten them to breed and do it multiple times in a row. So the Seahorse Hawaii Foundation is one of those farms or aquariums that's trying to breed the sea dragons so that, again, we can have a living gene bank. All right, that is all I have for right now. Now I'm going to open this up to questions. So if any of you guys have any questions about seahorses, I'm a totally open book. I love questions. And if there's something that I don't know, I can definitely try and figure that out for you. You can type it in the little chat box, or ask a Q&A question. You're welcome, Lily. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope I was able to give you some information that you didn't know before, some awesome seahorse facts. I do hope to be doing more videos about marine science and not just necessarily critters in the ocean, but also, you know, how the ocean works and things like that. So stay tuned, and I really hope to have more and make this a little bit more of a series. That's a really good question, Laura. So Laura asked, how does the Seahorse Farm ship the seahorses without damage? So believe it or not, FedEx is really amazing for handling live animals. So the Seahorse Farm packages the seahorses similarly how like a pet store would package your fish that you get. So in a bag with water and enough oxygen to get them to wherever they're going, right? Kind of looks like a poofy little Cheeto bag. And then we put them into a padded box with a little bit with little hand warmers to regulate the temperature within the box. And then they go straight from our door or the Seahorse Farm's door to the customer's door. So they do get shipped overnight. So they're to their new Forever Aquarium home within 24 to 48 hours. Okay. Thanks for the talk. What type of environment are seahorses typically found in Hawaii? It's a good question. So seahorses are really rare and hard to see in Hawaii. There is one species or two that are endemic to Hawaii. One of them is the Hippocampus hylonis, or the Hilo seahorse. It's really adorable, yellow with little light brown spots. And it's mostly found on the eastern side of this island in Hilo, hence the name Hilo. So it's more like in the corals, things like that. I know that I have seen some seahorses in like the Wailoa River Basin in Hilo, like in the mucky areas. So corals, a little bit mucky areas as well. Lily, you went to the Seahorse Farm. That's super awesome. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up, Lily. The Seahorse Farm also does tours. So if you are ever interested in learning more about seahorses and getting to see them face-to-face in person, the Seahorse Farm does do tours. And you actually get to have your own unique experience with a seahorse at the end, and you get to hold one, which is really kind of a fun selling point that most people like about the farm. Where do I see seahorses on Big Island? Other than in like a plankton sample from a plankton tow, I haven't really seen seahorses on the Big Island yet. But I hope to find one or multiple in the future and see seahorses. Okay. The Seahorse Farm in Kona was started by Carol and Craig Schmar, or Carol Cozy Schmar and Craig Schmar, husband and wife duo. They are a mom and pop shop, so they're, you know, it's all family pretty much owned and run. So I don't think that they're the founder of Trident Seafoods. Do other people in other countries eat seahorses other than dried ones for medicinal purposes? I have not found anything that says that. There's not a whole lot of meat on the seahorse's bones. They're kind of scrawny little bony animals. So there's not a whole lot there in terms of something to eat. Sandy will find them. Yeah, I'm sure they will. I'm sure Sandy will find them. Sandy's really good at finding little critters. All right. Any more questions out there? No? All right, guys. Well, that is all that I have. So please keep your ear out and keep an eye on our Kona Honu page. When can you come back to Hawaii to look for seahorses? That unfortunately is not up to me. I wish it was. Oh, you're asking when? When can you come back? Yeah. So whenever the travel restrictions are lifted and we can get back to diving on the boat and things like that. So absolutely come on out. We'll look for seahorses and we'll have a blast and go look for them. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today for the first ever Marine Science with Mermaid Mo. Please keep an eye on the Kona Honu page. I hope to be doing this more often. As I'm sure most of you know who are divers, divers love diving and we love talking about diving. And we also love the ocean and we love talking about the ocean. So I, really enjoy sharing my love and my passion for the ocean and diving and things like that with people, and just talking stories and sharing information so that hopefully other people will be inspired and they too will fall in love with the ocean as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and log off. Thank you all so much again. And I hope to see you guys in the hopefully very near future out on Kona Honu's boats and maybe in the shop or around town or whatever. I really hope to get back out in the water soon. Yeah, absolutely, Oren. That's my goal. I want to help people. I want to help people throughout this indefinite surface interval. I'm feeling it as well. So, all right, guys, thank you so much.